Peter, Dave, and Jake, who did all the traveling and filming, they spent 3 years doing it, and then they gave all this footage to me and said, okay, do something with it. And then it took me a year to put this together in this shape. Yeah, I mean, it's, for me, I mean, when they brought me this film, I mean, for me, obviously the beautiful photography. I mean, they're primarily photographers, the two of them. Peter is a very well-known National Geographic photographer. If you go to his website, you'll see some of the most amazing images. And Jake is actually, Jake and Dave, as they mentioned in the movie, are mountaineers. In fact, Jake actually teaches people how to get on the Mount Everest. And he's either here or he's in Nepal. Those are the two places. So I was pretty much on my own devices to make this film together because these two guys were, in fact, Peter, he just finished actually another pretty amazing feat. Actually, he's one of the few people to have walked the Grand Canyon from start to finish. And he almost died doing that. They almost died doing this too, so that's what they do. So yeah, anyway, the making of this film was special to me, partly because it's about a river, and I'm from India, I grew up there. I mean, I think I've been to the Ganges when I was a child. I think when I was 10 years old. I barely touched it. But yeah, I mean, these kind of issues really, speak to me, especially the environment and all the things that we're dealing with. And Peter had done another film about the Colorado River, which I saw, which was pretty heartbreaking too, which we kind of mention in this film a little bit. So that's what drew me to work on this film. And yeah, it turned out pretty nicely, actually. When I make a documentary film, this is the approach. I'm not trying to answer anything, neither am I trying to find a solution. I'm trying to say this is how it is, and this is how it will be if you don't do something about it. So that's what the film does. It shows this is how it is. If you think we should do something about it, okay, let's do something about it. If not, this is going to be the consequence. Every consequence does not entirely happen out of accident, right? So, there is an element of disregard, an element of apathy, an element of all sorts of things that eventually lead you to a certain consequence. It's not just by accident that certain consequences happen. And it's the same with this. I mean, in fact, you were mentioning Satyajit Ray is one of my favorite filmmakers in the Apu trilogy, the second part. The whole film is set in Banaras. And you look at that, I mean, you see Banaras then was very different. It was beautiful. I mean, it was clean. It was much cleaner than it is. Where do we get from there to here? Those are the kind of questions. Of course, you know the answers. The population has quadrupled and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But infrastructure didn't keep up with it, Like he says, 50% of the sewage cannot be treated because there's no infrastructure to treat it. Because they're coming from places where there is no municipality, there is no, planning, there's no, so how far do we go back to fix things?
I was curious to know, was it a conscious choice for you to start with the cremation part before you came to the arti and all of that?
No, I don't think it was a conscious, it just kind of flowed together in terms of the narrative as how it's going there. The film kind of just goes in and out of being philosophical and realistic and philosophical and realistic. And so the cremation part is sort of realistic in a sense. And then the philosophical part is the people coming to wash off their sins. So there is a little bit of that kind of playing off of each other you see all through the film, if you notice. To answer your question, also the human impact in terms of what happens in Varanasi as people taking a dip is actually a very minor part of the pollution of the river. The major part happens in Kanpur. It's mainly the industrial waste and the raw sewage that comes in is the problem. And it's not people taking a dip is not really a problem, but yeah, they need to be educated to not throw trash in there. And dead bodies, of course, dumping them is not burnt is also a problem. But that section of the human interaction there with the river is not that big a problem as the industrial effluents going in there is. But yeah, but the whole thing between being realistic and philosophical, because essentially like Anand just said, this whole idea that Ganga is a goddess, but then how do we pollute it? It's a spiritual river, but then how do you defile it? So this is the whole central question of the film. How can we not see that paradox? In fact, the original title of the film was Ganges Paradox, but we changed it. But that paradox, which is evident, is what the film tries to capture, is how can you do that when you say it is sacred? How can you do this?